Hello, everybody. Good morning. So I want to introduce you to what the default looks like for product management. It's this. It's a hamster wheel of execution. There is a never-ending slew of tickets to write, messages to respond to, emails, meetings, and we have all been there. And what I am going to do today is kind of similar to John. I'm going to introduce a game where you can use this as a way to get off this hamster wheel, or at least slow it down a little bit and make more time for strategy. We're going to talk about how you can narrow your focus and exclude options, operationalize your strategy, and use all of that to make a little bit more time to spend more time on that strategy. This is going to help you increase your effectiveness as a leader. It's going to raise your visibility. It's going to get you recognized for those skills that you can bring to the organization that you feel are not being fully recognized right now because you're too much in this execution trap. Strategy can feel like a luxury, and if you feel too busy for strategy, you're not alone. I went ahead and asked my audience, how often do you feel like you don't have enough time for strategy? 90% of individual contributors feel like they don't have enough time. Promotions don't seem to help much. We're at 85% for their bosses, the managers and directors. And once you get up to the VPs and CPOs, you get a whopping only 60% of your time feeling like you don't have enough time for strategy. So I guess that's an improvement. And I felt the same way when I was an individual contributor product manager. I was like completely overwhelmed by all of the stuff to do. And I said, you know what? When I get a promotion, I'll get more time for strategy because it's going to be more of my job. I got that promotion. And just like everybody here, I did not end up getting much more time for strategy. It turned out that I had all the same responsibility for execution and now just had added responsibility of more strategic direction. And what I learned through this is that you actually have to figure out how to slow the execution down because there's never going to be a time where strategy is just going to present itself and make itself available for you to work on. And if you're so busy that you don't have time to think about your strategy, you definitely don't end up having time to communicate your strategy. And this communication gap hurts everyone. I asked on the same poll, is your leader's strategy crystal clear? Can you explain it back to them? 10% of individual contributors felt that they had strategic clarity in their organizations. It gets worse. 9% of their managers feel like they're getting strategic clarity. And only once you get up to be reporting into the CEO, do you feel like maybe half of you have time, have the ability to understand what your manager's strategy is. And I'm seeing some smiles and some nods out there. This is familiar to you too, isn't it? I've gotten frustrated by not knowing what my manager's strategy is, and I've gone to my manager and said, hey, I'm confused. And they're like, oh, well, and they sort of try to explain stuff, and I'm like, I went back to the PMs on my team. I'm like, I think our manager doesn't have a strategy, and I can't figure out what I'm supposed to be doing because I don't know what the strategy is overall. So let's just put something together that we can use. We got in a room, we put something together. I went back to my manager and like, look at what we figured out, what we wrote down. Pro tip, going to your manager and saying, you don't have a strategy. Not a good career move. So what I learned from that, though, is he did have a strategy. It just wasn't getting communicated well. And this is the case across the board. So these problems are interconnected. And what we need is a system, right, a game that helps us get more time for strategy, more time to communicate our strategy, and then more time to actually do the work that we want to be doing and get off that execution hamster wheel. And if you put the right infrastructure in place, the game gets easier. So I'm going to introduce here the strategy flywheel. And the idea here is that you start by finding that piece of focus, that narrowed focus of, this is something I know is within my team's strategy. And so I am going to make it very clear that this is that focus. You then use that to exclude options. You're going to go ahead and say, hey, that's really cool, and it doesn't relate to this focus, so we're going to table it for now. You then operationalize your strategy, which means make it easier for others to find, to understand, and to justify your strategy. And don't worry, I'm going to go into what that means in a lot of detail later. And then through all of this, you have created a sliver of time because you have gotten a couple of things on that hamster wheel to slow down. And you can use that time, reinvest that time back into the flywheel again. And every time you go through this cycle, you're going to free up a little bit more time. And so leaders in the room, right? I said before that leaders always have more responsibility, and that is the case here too. And so as you're listening to this, think not only about what you are doing yourself to run through this flywheel and communicate out your strategic direction, but also think about what you need to do to enable the rest of your team to have that ability to operationalize their strategy and share out their work. So you can start doing this without a promotion. This is me at my first product management job, sitting on the floor, hanging with my designers, and I wrote out our strategy on a really ugly PowerPoint, printed it out on the biggest sheet of paper I could find, stuck it on the wall right next to a Post-it version of my opportunity solution tree, and I used this as a way to communicate my strategy. I didn't even realize at the time that I was building out a strategy process, that I was starting this flywheel. And what happened is that I was creating some transparency. Everybody was walking by my desk and, they sort of peek at what I'm up to right now and be able to know what's going on. I'd run my team stand-ups over there, so we were always talking about these things and connecting the work we were doing back to this. And it's ugly. It's, nothing fancy, but it worked. So being clear, communicating well, matters a lot more than polish. And so we're going to go into a whole bunch of different ways to operationalize your strategy. And don't worry, because I know a lot of us are not in an office environment anymore where sticking a giant poster on the wall makes much sense. So we're going to figure out some other strategies to use here. You've gotten through your first crank of the flywheel, right? You've set your first focus. You've said your first no. You've got a couple of extra minutes, and you're like, okay, now what? When you're thinking about how to operationalize your strategy, put it in 3 buckets. 1, make it easy for people to find your strategy. Don't make it that they have to know that you've got something that exists, that they then have to go find and figure out where you've put it and go through all of the different places at your company where you could hide this information, right? Make it easy for them to find within the work they're doing. 2, make it so they can understand it, right? You know your customer really well, and you know the problems, and your partners in sales might use different language. They might think about it differently. So make it easy for them to understand. And then 3rd, make it easy for them to justify. So you want to turn everybody who has found your strategy and understood it into a rabid advocate and fan of what you're doing. So you want to make sure that you are making it easier for them to become that fan and that supporter. I'm going to go through a lot of examples, a lot of different ways to operationalize your strategy here. Please don't try to do them all, and especially not all at once. But every time you're going through that flywheel, pick one. See which one makes the most sense for you right now and go ahead and do it. Take your first spin. The first principle of operationalizing your strategy is to design for the people that won't read. When we think about strategy, we generally are writing these big, long documents. They're amazing. They've got all of your thought process around what you want to do, why you want to do it, who you're doing it for, a story about them growing up as a child and how that has influenced them as a person and growing up. And that is why you were doing this strategy, because it goes all the way back to their childhood psychology and the data. And these documents are amazing because they have all that nuance. And who's going to read it, right? Not only that, who's going to find it? So you've written this gorgeous document. It's well thought out. And you want everybody to read it. So you start with who has found it. You then narrow that down to who actually goes ahead and reads it such that they understand it. And for that little group of people who have gone through the effort to find it and read it, they will be able to justify it. And for everybody else, they're going to say, I don't know. So you need to make sure that you are designing your documents for the people who don't read, who aren't going to search for it, right? So you want to figure out, how can you make it visual? How can you put it in a place where they're already looking at it? How can you get it into a short idea that can communicate what they need to know? Think about the other people in your company as your users and how you want to communicate with them about it. So I'm working with Bianca on coaching right now, and she's starting a new team. And everybody's asking, so what do you do actually? And she's like, I answer this all the time and it doesn't seem to be sticking. And they're actually saying, what is your strategy? And so I asked her, well, how does your company generally tend to communicate? And she said, oh, we're a Notion shop, right? Like everybody loves a good Notion doc. And so we worked together and she put her strategy into just a Notion doc that could be entirely seen above the fold, a couple of key points about what's going on. And then she links after that to the big, deep strategy. So now she's in a meeting, somebody says, what do you do? She says, let me tell you. Pulls up the screen share, shows the doc, explains it. It takes about 30 seconds, and then says, I'm going to drop the link in the chat. If you want to read more about it, go right ahead. Everybody now knows what her strategy is. They know where to find more information, how to dig in deeper. She has made it easier to find and easier to understand. So the nuance still matters. You need to have the big doc, but you also need to have the shortcut, and you need to make sure you're doing the right level of detail for the audience. Also is thinking about how to bring the information about your strategy out to people where they are going to be interacting more with your work. So filtering by strategic pillars is where this comes in. Mike mentioned that I did a talk many years ago, and it was on prioritization methods, how to use data and things like Rice or Moscow to create a ranked list of what your priorities should be, and then you start from the top and work your way down to the bottom. And one of the key points that I really missed in this talk and didn't learn till later was the idea of filtering. And so let me explain this a little bit more. I was consulting for an ed tech company, and their director of product, Eric, came to me. He's like, Jenny, my CPO just keeps saying that they want us to be more analytical in our prioritization. He just insists on a Rice. Like, I need to produce the document and the spreadsheet. But I've got so many things on this list. Even if I just put 20 minutes into every item that could be on this list in order to get the score, it's going to take me days. And I don't have that, right? He had the execution hamster wheel going on. And so we worked together to instead sharpen his strategy, just narrowing that focus by one notch. When we did that, and he added a column to his spreadsheet. And that column was strategy aligned, not strategy aligned. Icebox, going to look at it later. Let's keep it. And so he's going through, sorting it out. And the list of options dropped down dramatically. It became so much shorter. And so what he was then able to do was actually run analysis on the things that he wanted to consider on his roadmap, which made it a much stronger strategy. And you can do this not just on your roadmap and your prioritization, right? But make sure that you're putting this, if you've got an intake form where maybe sales is sending you ideas, that you put a little drop down there. Which strategic pillar does this align with? Right? Just make sure that they are seeing in every spot possible what your strategy might be and connecting, like, oh, there's strategy behind what this person is doing. The beautiful thing about this too is you are actually now putting together a system to exclude options. So next time you go through that flywheel, the crank is just a little bit faster. And so that's another way to make it easier for people to find your strategy. The hardest thing is making it easy for people to justify your strategy, because you have to go to them and be like, oh yeah, no, I'm not doing that. And they have to be like, oh, that's cool, right? That's what you want. And so to get that kind of reaction, how do you get in their heads? And that's where the language of money can come in, the language of leadership, right? Elena talked a ton about this yesterday, and it was fantastic. And you need to learn how to do this too, right? We're going after this market because we see $50 million there is the opportunity. I'm working on this feature It's going to improve conversion, we think, by about 5%, which should be $200,000. Sarah was a director of product and in my business case bootcamp course in March. And after the course, her leadership said, hey, can you work on our business strategy and product strategy and take them to the next level? And she actually ended up building out a KPI tree for revenue. So she put revenue at the top and all of the different ways the company could make money below that. And then what were the things in the product that they could do that could drive all the way up to improving revenue? A simple hierarchical tree, just a visualization of the way the company worked. She used that and said, I can target over here, and that's going to be a really strong way to drive revenue and drive the business forward. Wrote this up, created the document, and then trained her team on using the same KPI tree to talk about their own strategies. So here she is enabling her strategy and enabling financial awareness across the entire company. And she ended up actually getting a promotion to VP because she was showing, here I am making my strategy easy for you to justify. It connects to your goals. And now, right, I've done the same for my team. So think about all of those touch points we've talked about so far, right? Your big strategy document, your intake forms, your roadmap. Are you making sure that there is a line in every single one of those to talk about money? And are you then setting up your data pipelines, setting up your processes internally so that you can fill that line in with regularity? Don't let money be an afterthought. And so I've talked a whole bunch here about different ways to operationalize your strategy. But how do you know when you've actually operationalized enough? That's your job to figure out, right? Because we can keep turning this flywheel and going through it as many times as we need. And we need to be the ones to say, okay, we're getting somewhere, we're seeing progress. So we put on our user research hats. Go to your colleagues, go to your stakeholders and say, hey, can you explain my strategy back to me to make sure I've done a good enough job explaining it to you? And as you do this, they're going to get it totally wrong. And you're going to say, I need to do some more. And then maybe you'll go to a designer on your team. And you'll say, hey, can you explain my strategy back to me? And they'll be pretty close. You'll be like, okay, I'm doing a pretty good job with this group. They're getting enough, right? I have done enough here to operationalize my strategy and communicate. Now I need to go back to those other stakeholders and work and crank this some more. That communication gap, right? We are all contributing to that problem. And so we need to all be working to solve it. And the great news is we are product managers, and this is a user problem. And since the users are our own coworkers, it's an easier one to solve, right? The solutions are within our hands. And as you do this, something really cool starts to happen, which is that you actually will build a strategy-driven product culture. So first you get it where they can repeat the strategy back to you. And when you've really done it right, they start making fun of you for it. They start joking about the strategy. And that's actually what happened for me when I stuck that poster on the wall, is they started, making fun of the DevX rock stars. And I was and talking about my strategy and saying like, oh, look, there goes Jenny doing the, those things. And it was awesome. It was so great because that meant I had actually made a strategy that was sticky enough that they were able to make a joke about it. So if this ever happens to you, know that you have run this operationalization enough and you are making progress in the right direction. There's a whole bunch more I wanted to talk about, and I decided to put it into some burrowed treasures. Yes, I went there. I'm doubling down on this hamster thing, everybody. So when I work on this flywheel with my coaching sessions, I get two frequent questions. One, that excluding options, how do you say no to people in a good way? How can you actually do that in a way that's productive? And two, they're like, listen, I know you say that my leadership has a strategy. I have no idea what it is, and I can't make my own decisions without that. So what do I do when I'm pretty sure they really don't have a strategy? So you can scan the QR code. You can go over to jennywanger.com/strategy and get the resources. We said extra material. So let's jump back again. This is a strategy that gets you more time to work on your strategy. I know, it's pretty meta. And it can work at any feature size, right? If you're just, you're working on this one little piece of the puzzle, and you can say, we're going to make sure our strategy is that every customer can do X in 5 minutes or less. You can do it with an entire product portfolio. You just need to figure out, where is that place where you've got the buy-in, where you are able to say clearly, this is my narrowed focus. Once you get there, you can exclude your options, right? You can say, that's great, and we're gonna table it. It's going in the icebox. You operationalize your strategy, so you make it easier to find, understand, and justify. And when you do that, that's all going to add up to make just a little bit more time for you to be able to go back and revisit that narrowed focus and narrow it in just one notch further. So it's not about creating the big document for your strategy all in one go, right? It's about building that document over time, building that context, that awareness, that thought process over time. And if you do this right, you actually unlock a second flywheel based around your reputation. Because the more that everybody knows your strategy, they see you communicating it, they see you as a strategic thinker, they are going to say, aha, that person, they've got a reputation for being a strategic thinker. They are thinking not only about themselves, and they are not stuck in execution. They are thinking about what the company needs and where we need to go. And so I can trust them to make the right choice on something. Right? I can trust them to move this initiative forward. And so they're going to you are going to get more autonomy, because they're going to say, you're not just a ticket jockey anymore, right? You are that strategic thinker. Every time you're going through this first flywheel to make sure that people know what your strategy is, you're also then unlocking the second flywheel where people know that you're strategic. So Sarah, the woman who was in my business case boot camp, this is exactly what she did, right? She had gone from, here is this KPI tree, here is my strategy, here I'm going to train the team up on it. And everybody said, okay, she really gets what we're trying to do as a company. And she got that promotion to VP. That allowed her to become more of the leader she wanted to be, have more autonomy, more choices over what her team was doing, helped her team grow in different ways, and advanced her career. I would love more hours in the day, and I'm sure all of you would love more hours as well. And since that's not an option, our second best option is to design a game that can bend a little bit of time in our favor and help us get there. So if you can narrow your focus, use that strategic focus to say no, make it more well communicated, and reinvest that time, you can also start to move this direction. And it can work at any level. You don't need permission. And please, please, please don't wait for the promotion, because you're far more likely to get the promotion if you start doing this than if you just wait, right? As we saw at the beginning, getting a promotion doesn't get you more time for strategy. So tomorrow, we're leaving this amazing, amazing theater, and we're going back to our desks. And you need to pull out a Post-it note and write down what that strategic focus is going to be for you. What's that first piece where you can say, I know our strategy is clear here, and this is where I'm going to be working? Put it on your desk. Next time somebody comes to you with something that's outside of that, you say, that's really cool, and I can't put it on my plate. The hamster wheel has started to slow down just a little bit because you have said no. You can then communicate it out, right? Figure out where is a place where you can communicate and make sure that this strategic focus that you've picked is in everybody's view, so they know that that's where things are headed. And you have then taken your first crank of the flywheel. So please start your system, make it visible, build trust, claim your autonomy, and please, please enjoy some freedom from the hamster wheel. Thank you.